Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Asya Kamenika, and I'm the head of the EIT Digital Professional School. I'm delighted to welcome you to the first session of EIT Digital Generative AI Essential Series, our educational journey into the world of generative AI. Today marks the first session of the four-part series exploring this dynamic field. Our goal is to provide a strong foundation and hands-on experience covering various aspects of AI applications, including a comprehensive introduction, ChatGPT, project management marketing, customer journey, and ethical consideration. In this first session, titled Leveraging the Power of AI, the Case of ChatGPT, our distinguished instructors, Jim Sporer and Marco Podian, will guide us through the past, present, and future of generative AI with a special focus on ChatGPT. A couple of words about EIT Digital. EIT Digital is a part of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, and as such is the largest digital innovation ecosystem in Europe. It brings together a vast network that includes corporations, universities, research centers, and startups. Our objective is to shape digital renewal, accelerate innovation, foster cutting-edge research initiatives, and nurture the startup system. In the educational sphere, we promote entrepreneurial education across our different schools, master schools, summer school, professional or doctoral schools. We offer degrees, courses, and training in the field of digital technology and innovation that combine technical and entrepreneurial skill. Today's session is part of this ongoing effort. Before we introduce and hand over to our esteemed speakers, let me highlight a few housekeeping rules to ensure a smooth session. One, given today's class size, your microphones and cameras will be muted throughout the session. Regarding your questions, please use the Q&A feature exclusively. There will be 2 designated intervals for addressing them. First, after Jim's session at the end of the first hour, and following Marco's presentation toward the end of the second hour. Following Marco's ChatGPT demonstration, we will have a competencies quiz scheduled to quickly evaluate your understanding of the content. The quiz link will be shared in the chat and through a QR code. The quiz will consist of multiple choice questions taking an estimated 3 minutes. Let me also remind you that the completion of the quiz grants an attendance certificate for the session today and a certificate of completion for those participating in all 4 sessions and completing all quizzes. Our lectures will include polls during the sessions, so that will appear on the screen for your active engagement, so please join with your input. And after today's session, a link to an online evaluation form will be shared, so your feedback is important and we look forward to receiving it. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our distinguished speakers. Jim Sporer is a leading figure in service science and open source AI. He's a thought leader at the intersection of technology and societal impact. He holds a bachelor in physics from MIT and PhD in computer science with a focus on AI from Yale. His impactful career spans roles at IBM and Apple, including Director for Open Source AI Data and CTO at IBM Venture Capital Relations Group, and further groundbreaking work at Apple. He's retired and currently serves as a member of the board of directors of the nonprofit International Society of Service Innovation Professionals. Marco Podian is a seasoned IT professional with a profound passion for generative AI. His versatile career has seen him wear various hats, transitioning from a hands-on software engineer to a strategic developer evangelist. Marco is truly passionate about fostering connections between companies and the developer community. So please get ready for an enlightening session with Jim and Marco. Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Asha. Let me go ahead and go into screen share mode. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. I want to first thank my colleagues at EIT Digital for this opportunity to present to you. I'm based out here in Silicon Valley, California. The sun is not yet risen, but it's a great morning to take a deep dive into generative AI essentials. And as you heard, this is the introductory part of a 4-part series. And on completion, there's a certificate of completion. I'm going to give some high-level introductory material here at the beginning and tell you a little bit about the past, present, and future of AI to try to inspire you, because AI is only going to get better. And so we really want to inspire you, and then Marco will give you the hands-on experience, showing you various prompts, capabilities that you can use in ChatGPT. This is a part of a 4-part series, so I just want to highlight that this is session 1 you're in right now. Session 2, which will talk about navigating project management with AI, a modern approach. Antonio will go through that on December 5th. Then in session 3, which will be December 12th, Edwin will take you through generative AI, unlocking the future of customer journeys. And then finally on session 4, December 19th, Nima and Grai will look at developing your AI conscience and unraveling the many ethical dilemmas that are associated with generative AI. So I think this is going to be a great series. I welcome you to this first one. I hope you enjoy it very much. And I just want to say, as what I will try to cover today is I want to give you some inspiration. I want you to start thinking about generative AI in the context of AI's history, its present, where it is today, impressive but imperfect, and the future of where it's going, because it's going to keep getting better and better and better, and it's going to be an important tool for you to have in your toolkit. And then how do you keep up with this accelerating change? So then I'll talk about climbing up, ways to accelerate your learning trajectory and keep up with these fast changing situation. And finally, I want to try to just help you unleash your own creativity and find ways to stay future ready in this AI era. Then I'll turn it over to Marco, and he'll take you through the ChatGPT features in a deep dive, as well as techniques for basic and advanced prompting and real-world applications, the meat of today's message. Here's what I want you to remember. Remember, there's an upcoming quiz. These 4 dates, 1956, 2023, 2060, and 2080. You can see one is kind of in the far past, 1956. That was the year I was born, so I feel like my life is somehow connected to AI. But I was born in 1956, and that's when the very first AI workshop happened at the Dartmouth conference. 2023, this year. Earlier this year, ChatGPT achieved 100 million users in just 2 months. In September, they had 1.5 billion visits in September. So it's great that you're adding ChatGPT to your tool belt, and it'll be an important tool for you in the future, I'm sure, as well as other generative AI tools. Now, we've seen a little bit about the past, we're the present. What about the future? So by 2060, why do you want to remember 2060? It's predicted that an exascale of computing will cost $1,000 by 2060 if Moore's law continues. That's the computing power, the estimate computing power of one human brain is 2060. 2080, wow, that's very far in the future. Why should you remember 2080? Because 2080 is predicted to be the year of a Rana scale. I know that may sound like a strange word. What is a Rana scale? Well, a Rana scale allows the simulation of 1 billion human brains. So you could imagine companies having access in 2080 to 1 billion human brain equivalent AIs. So this progress that we see from past, a humble beginning in 1956, I'll cover that, to present, to future possibilities, I want you to keep these 4 dates in mind. And what does all this mean? Well, progress in AI, artificial intelligence, is directly connected to the cost of computing. So one of the things I want to give you today, I know some of you are business leaders, I want to give you my view on Moore's Law and how you can think about it, an easy way to remember it so you can see how as the cost of computing goes down, AI capabilities are going to go up and up. And also I want to, emphasize that progress in AI really translates to intelligence augmentation. It's about us getting smarter as individuals. It's about businesses getting smarter. It's about whole countries getting smarter. And the way you can think about measuring intelligence augmentation, at least at the national scale, is estimating the GDP per worker. So I'll share with you some stuff to think about that as well from a business perspective. As mentioned, I'm out here in Silicon Valley. I'm a retired executive. I worked at IBM. I've worked at Apple. Yes, I reported to Steve Jobs at one point. And I just want to say that my last role at IBM was leading our open source AI initiative. And if I don't have time to go into it today, but I really, really highly recommend you, in addition to the ChatGPT commercial vendor tools, you also take a look, those of you who are interested in programming, at the massive capabilities in open source. So let's talk about inspiration. So the first impression, I'm sure some of you have used it. We'll have a survey a little bit later to try to get a sense of the audience here. But your first impression with these tools is this is insanely great, as Steve Jobs used to like to say, insanely great productivity, insanely great quality in some instances. But as you start using it, you go, this is awesome progress, but there's all these imperfections. There's mistakes that it's making. There's problems with this, problems with that, but it will get better. So that's the important point. It's impressive, it's imperfect, but it will get better. And then I want to give you these ways to remember some of these business implications. So let's just dive in. I want to start by showing you this image. It is an image of a monkey at a typewriter in a library with a parrot, what I call a stochastic parrot. And I generated this image using Microsoft Bing's image creator powered by DALL-E 3. It's generative AI for image creation. And look at just the few characters that I had to type. I said, please create an image of a library. And in the library is a monkey using a typewriter with a stochastic parrot dictating to the monkey. And boom, within 30 seconds, I had this beautiful image. I actually had 4 images for those who've used this. And I looked at this image and I thought, this is a great image. This is exactly what was kind of rolling around in my head. And it's what I wanted. I was happy with it. Took me about 30 seconds to get it. And then I thought, how long would it have taken me to do an internet search, find elements, try to compose this? At least 30 minutes. So this is insanely great productivity and quality. So on your first impression of using a lot of these tools, you're going to find this overwhelming, wow, this is really, really impressive. But as you use it, as you start going forward with more complex tasks and start putting together whole workflows, the imperfections start hitting you and you start saying, oh, this is not quite as great as I thought. Down here in the corner in the lower right, there's more what I call Spore use cases. And there's a URL there to my Service Science website. And you can go there, and I didn't want to just load up this presentation with all the different ways that I've used generative AI tools, but I'm using multiple generative AI tools every day, and they're great. And some of the use cases are there. So if you want to learn more, take a screenshot or a picture of that URL and go out and explore it after the talk. So let's talk a little bit about the history of AI. And it starts, as I mentioned, in 1956. The proposal for this workshop was written in 1955. And I include in my speaker notes on this, and my talk has been uploaded to SlideShare. So if you want this talk, go to slideshare.net/spore. You can download it and get the speaker notes as well. And I have the link to the original proposal, which I'll show on the next slide for this Dartmouth conference. I just want to mention a little bit that this conference was very, very important, and they thought they were going to be able to make massive progress on AI just with a few smart people in a few months. In 1997, IBM's Deep Blue beat the world champion in chess. That was a big moment in AI history. This original workshop, they were predicting that a computer would beat the best human in chess, some of the people there, in just a couple years. So you can see at the beginning, the progress wasn't as fast. There was a lot of optimism about how fast it was going to be, but it wasn't as fast as people thought it would be. In 2011, IBM's Watson Jeopardy beat the world champions in quiz shows. I think that was a wake-up moment for a lot of people that, hey, this AI stuff, I better start looking at it. And then, of course, in the rest here, I've got links to, and Marco will also talk a little bit about some of the this perhaps of these great papers. And you can, if you're deep technical, and I know some of you are in this audience, you'll definitely want to take a look at these papers. These are the technical foundations of all the advances that have been coming. And of course, it's accelerating. And for those of you who are really following this, you've probably heard of OpenAI's Q-Star. Marco will also talk a little bit about the drama of OpenAI, their CEO leaving and then back. It's a Silicon Valley soap opera, but Q-Star may be very, very important for getting rid of some of the errors that plague generative AI right now. So this is side by side. This is a busy screen. What I want you to take away from this is in 1955, John McCarthy, by the way, he was a contractor at IBM Almaden Research out here in Silicon Valley. And when I took over a research group there at IBM Almaden, John McCarthy actually reported to me as a contractor. So that was very, very exciting for me. Marvin Minsky is the next name. He was at Harvard University. He was one of my faculty at MIT when I was there in the 1970s. So these very, very bright people in 1955 wrote a proposal. They asked for $13,000 for about 8 of them to get together at this workshop in New Hampshire and figure out, if you read over here, automatic computers, how to best program a computer, neural nets, you'll see there, number 3, and how to calculate the cost of different calculations. So they were going to figure out, make major progress at least, maybe not figure it all out, but make major progress in one summer in 1955. Well, fast forward to 2023 and OpenAI's GPT technical report, and boom, everything that they laid out, I think, in this 1955 proposal, serious progress. In fact, solutions to a lot of what they were proposing back then. Computers were actually able to do some of the solve kinds of problems now reserved to humans. We can now firmly say that in 2023, computers can solve certain types of problems previously reserved to humans. So let's put this in a big context, and I'm going to try to make this as simple as I can. This is going to be my version of Moore's Law, but it's so important for you to understand all of this progress is tied to the cost of computation. The cheaper you can do more computation, the more artificial intelligence capabilities you're going to get. So how to remember this is a bit technical, but start in 1960 and draw a vertical line every 20 years, all the way out to 2080. Then there's cost. So draw horizontal lines. Start with $1 trillion, $1 billion, $1 million, $1,000, $1. And now you've got a nice grid. Well, if you want to understand the cost of computation, it's really simple with this grid. Just draw the diagonals. That's right. Just draw the diagonals. And you'll see 1,000 instructions per second. That I remember that in 1960s because my uncle worked for IBM and he was saying, Jimmy, we have computers that can do 1,000 instructions per, 1,000 additions, 1,000 multiplications a second. Bet you can't do that. And sure enough, we got to 1 million instructions per second, up to a gigascale, 1 billion instructions per second, a terascale, 1 million instructions per second. And over time, well, I have to make a slight adjustment because at the beginning there was a little bit of a learning curve. So if you shift the kiloscale and megascale up a little bit, these curves actually show the cost of computation over the years. Now, what's interesting is I want to draw your attention to that exascale, because remember, that's the computing power, estimated computing power of one human brain. And you can see that it gets to about $1,000 at 2060. So an exascale, that dark blue line in the middle, in 2060, it's about $1,000. But the green line going up is the GDP per employee trend. And I've written some papers about this. You can find my papers, but this is what's really going on. What's happening is the cost of computation is going down, and our productivity for employees is going up. And this chart makes entrepreneurs and venture capitalists in Silicon Valley super excited, because the biggest barrier to doing a startup is I've got to hire the data scientist, I've got to hire the marketing expert, I've got to hire these people, and that's all cost. And so as you get the cost of the productivity per employee higher and higher, that's very, very exciting for startups, and there's no end to startups at all. However, there's some advantages, many advantages to people over this technology. For one thing, these computers are very, very big, very, very expensive, and they take a lot of energy, a lot of power. In fact, this is a picture of one of the largest supercomputers in the world that IBM helped build a few years ago, the Summit supercomputer, and it requires 13 megawatts of power, not even to get to an exascale. To start approaching an exascale, it's using tens of millions of watts of power. But if we look at your human brain, my human brain, I touch the side of my head, it's cool. We're running on 20 watts and doing an exascale. So there's a long way to go to get this computing capability as powerful as the humans have it at such low energy. In fact, energy is a big problem, because more and more people are going to start using AI, and it takes energy, and we know that there's an impact on climate. I like this quote from the Wall Street Journal: using AI to summarize an email is like getting a Lamborghini to deliver a pizza. So there is this problem. Fortunately, IBM and many other companies are working on chips that can do massive amounts of AI computation at much lower energy costs. This is just a slide from a panel I recently ran on financing and investing in AI for climate sustainability. So this is a big problem, is energy. And there's also lots of other problems. I just chose this slide because it talks about plagiarism and digital property theft. It's going to be so easy to steal anything digital. Stealing it is going to be super easy. Bad actors can do it, and recombining it and generating new things. These are social issues that we're going to have to deal with. So again, AI is impressive, but it's imperfect. It has potential harm to the climate. It's got potential harm to social institutions and property rights. So we've got to figure all this out. And later in the series of lectures, in fact, the final one, you're going to hear a lot more about some of this using AI with conscience, which is very, very important. Now let's talk about climbing up, because accelerating change is here. And how do we keep up? Well, the only way we can keep up is with the help of others, social learning. And so a big question is, who do we follow? And I'll show you a slide next about who we follow. Now, the next thing I want to do is find out what kind of person are you. So we'll have a little survey, and then we'll dive in and think about, what do we do next? So awesome stuff does lie ahead. So here's who I follow. And these are, you might want to take a screenshot or go out. Like I say, I've already posted these. But how do you keep up with accelerating change? You have to follow a diverse collection of people, many different people, many different perspectives. The dimensions I use for following people, I've got some people I follow who are super realistic. They're very practical minds. They're actually doing stuff with code. They're building these systems. And then I've got people who are super optimistic. They see AI utopia. I do follow a few people who see the dark side, AI dystopia, and I have a slide on that in a little bit. But follow a diversity of people, because you can fall into hype traps and all sorts of other things if you don't follow a diversity of people. As I put this slide together and I looked at the screen, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm biased towards older white males like me. for some reason my brain thinks an older white male will communicate with me better. I have to increase my diversity of women and people of color and all sorts of people from different cultures. There's a lot of diversity that you need to follow if you want to have a good focus on the future of AI. So let's level set, and we're going to do a survey in a minute that's going to be posted. But what I'm going to be trying to find out is what types of generative AI tools are you using? And I do have on this slide, and I'll get out of screen share mode in a minute. I think you'll still be able to see the slide while we do the survey. But these are some of the people that are important that I follow as well. I'll just highlight Ethan Mollick down here in the lower left corner at UPenn. He is very practical. He has a weekly series. He gives you specific blog posts. How do you generate a business plan? How do you use AI like you've got an summer intern? I really like his posts. He's very, very good. So let's do the survey. How often are you using a generative AI tool? Never. Occasionally, at least once a week, multiple times a day. I'm D, multiple times a day. How many generative AI tools have you used? None, one, a few, over a dozen. Again, I'm D, over a dozen. So let's take a minute to get that survey done. You should see it popping up. Oh, I see it popping up in my chat. Okay, so now I'm going to view poll. I think I click on that. Okay, and I'm going to add my answers. And there they are. And then I'm going to submit it. And I'm done. I've clicked it. You should do the same, please. And in a minute, I'll see in the chat what the results are. And while I'm waiting for that, I'll just, on that previous slide, mention that I followed Don Norman. He was my boss at Apple. He was the vice president in charge of the advanced technology group under Steve and others, and for a while. And he's written a book called A Better World, and very, very insightful book. If you want to get the benefits out of AI, I encourage you to read his book on building a better world. There's also other people I follow who have more of a dystopian view, just so I keep a balance between the optimism and the great stuff AI will do, but also the realities of the harms that it can potentially do as well. So I don't see the results yet. I think maybe we're waiting for people to click the buttons. I do see there's 259 people in the course at the moment. That's great. And let's see. I'll give it just another 30 seconds, then I'll go on with my presentation if I don't see in the chat the results. I'm pretty sure we're going to see, because I've done this with other groups, and what I see is a big spike, never used it. I guess people come to these talks because they want to get started. And then I usually see a very small number who are using it every day. And most people have tried it or are starting to use it a little bit. And most people are limiting themselves to just one or two tools at the beginning, which kind of makes sense. You want to try to master some tools, but there's a broad spectrum of tools. As I said, there's things for creating video, there's all sorts of things. I don't see the results of the chat, but maybe we'll come back to that later. I'm just going to go ahead and get back to my presentation. I'm sure there's a distribution there, and we'll try to make that available to you all so you can see a little bit about where you stand relative to other people in this area. So just wrapping up this section, I want to say that, we get the future we invest in, so invest wisely. And I also want to say that service providers will not be replaced by AI. And by the way, we're all service providers. That's what I study, service science. We're all service providers. We're service providers in our home. We're service providers in our organizations. We're even service providers as citizens of our countries. We're all service providers. We will not be replaced by AI, but trusted service providers who use AI well and responsibly will likely replace those who don't, at least in business. Every person in a role in an organization is a service provider. There's so many people out there, influencers. Find one that you like, that you can relate to, speaks maybe your native language, or went to a school near you. There's many out there who are learning these tools, and they post lists of all these different tools. There's so many different tools. Sometimes you need a person. Look at number 8 on this list. This person does not exist. If you need a picture of a person that doesn't exist, go out to that tool. If you're trying to name a startup, go to number 9. Namelet, and it's an AI tool for generating names for startups. Just describe the startup. There's so many tools, and Marco in his section, which is coming up right after mine, will show you some amazing ones. Okay, my final section here. Unleashing your creativity. How are you going to stay future ready? You got to learn all these building blocks to stay future ready, and certainly Marco in his presentation is going to give you some very powerful insights into these building blocks. But oh, by the way, you're going to need to get bigger goals too. If you're thinking about staying future ready and you're just thinking about your work practices today and the level of goals that you have for today, way too low. The thing I've said probably since I think 2014, when I was giving talks to students that would come by IBM Almaden Research Center, I would ask the students, big student groups would come because they'd want to see what we're doing at IBM Research out here in Silicon Valley. And I'd go around and ask each student, even if there were 60 students in the audience, I would ask each one, tell me a little bit about yourself, what are your hobbies? And I would ask them, what would you do if you had 100 people working for you? And I had about 100 people working for me at IBM at the time. And a lot of them said, I have no idea. I'm just a student. I don't know what I would do if I had 100 people working for me. And I said, do you think Steve Jobs knew what to do if he had 100 workers working for him? You have to expand your imagination. If you're going to unleash your creativity, you're going to need bigger goals. And you're going to have to, if you're thinking about maybe I should become a serial entrepreneur someday, no, become a parallel entrepreneur. We're moving into an era of massive productivity and quality increases. And so you need to set bigger goals. And I'll share with you a little bit about my goals. And then we'll go into some Q&A. So if you can find the Q&A feature on this Microsoft Teams, I'm used to Zoom, I'm not used to Microsoft Teams. It's a fine product, of course, but if you can find the Q&A, you might want to start putting in some questions as I wrap up here. So when I think about unleashing my creativity, first of all, I reflect on my life, and I'm 67. I'm almost 68 years old. I grew up in this farmhouse in Maine, and I remember on the wall we had a party line telephone. Yes, a party line telephone made of wood. And I remember when we got a few years later, we got a better phone made of plastic. And I got to take apart that party line because the phone company didn't want them back. They were obsolete. There were big magnets in it. You had to crank it, and it would ring. It was a party line. I remember my mother saying, "Mrs. Smith, get off the line. This is a private call." Yes, I remember that. Growing up as a kid in Maine, there was a party line telephone in our house. When I got to MIT in 1975, I had a rotary phone in my dorm room. And I remember calling up. I had this first job I applied to was at a startup AI company doing speech recognition. And I went there, I interviewed. They said, "Oh, you're perfect for this job." And then I got back to my dorm room. It rang. The guy says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We've decided to go with another candidate." And oh, my heart sunk. Oh, this is a perfect job for me. And my girlfriend, who's my wife at the time, she happened to be in my dorm room. And she said, no, if you want this job, if this is perfect for you, you call them back and say you want to talk to the CEO of this company and give your pitch to the CEO. And she said, what do you have to lose? And I said, nothing. And she said, pick up the phone, call them, say you want 5 minutes with the CEO. So I did. The CEO said, come in. I took the bus over. I spoke to him. He says, you're hired. Wow. If you want to unleash your creativity, you're going to have to take risk. Sometimes you have to say, what do I have to lose? They've already said no. Nothing. Go for it. 1995, I was here in Silicon Valley. I got my first regular phone. 2015, of course, by then I'd had smartphones. What will I have by 2035? What will I have by 2055? I show a picture of the first program that I wrote on punch cards in 1972 when my high school got a punch card machine. Unleashing your creativity is understanding there's going to be more and more powerful tools coming along, and you've got to learn how to use these tools. You've got to take some risk. You've got to learn how to use the building blocks well. Where is this going? Well, when I think about unleashing my productivity in the future, I go to my digital twin. Now, already big companies are building digital twins of you. If you used LinkedIn, which is owned by Microsoft, they're building a digital twin of you. I know because some of my colleagues work over there at LinkedIn, and they're representing people with vectors of 1 million numbers per person. Amazon, if you use Amazon to buy things, they're building a digital twin of you to predict what you're going to buy. If you use any of the social media, they're using digital twins of you to predict what you're going to enjoy reading. The digital twin of me that Amazon has is so good, it's predicting, I buy a lot of books, it's predicting the books that I'll buy very, very well. And I'm excited to say that I've started working on my one of my big goals is to build a digital twin of myself that can answer some of my emails, maybe give some of my talks for me, do things when I'm too busy in the digital realm. Now, you may say that's a little crazy. Well, maybe. Jensen Huang, he's the founder of NVIDIA. NVIDIA is about, the big office of NVIDIA is like 5 miles from where I am right now here in Silicon Valley. And Jensen Huang, he has a digital twin of him. By the way, his company's building a digital twin of the whole planet Earth for climate and other things. They have a whole set of products around digital twins. I've got a lot of friends who work over there as well. And his digital twin, he calls it Toy Jensen. And you'll see here in this clip, this is one of the keynotes he gave a few years ago. Toy Jensen is not recorded. He's completely real time. So my advice is you got to AI upskill. You got to eventually build your digital twin. Big companies are doing it of you, so you might as well build your own that you can own. And this is, again, why I think it's so important you look at open source. And you have to set bigger goals, and you see my little star there. This directly implies learning better strategies for coping with failure and resiliently rebounding. If you set bigger goals, you're going to fail more of the time, but you will also develop capabilities for resiliently rebounding. And I do want to, if you think about the leaders of these AI companies that are, obviously hoping to profit from AI advancement, but several of them that I know personally, when I talk to them, they say, I ask, why are you doing this? Why are you investing so much in this? And a lot of times it comes down to they think if they can solve AI, they can solve all these other harder problems. And so I like this cartoon. So I'll end with this cartoon. It's from the, Why Faster Than 20. We shouldn't be exploring other planets until we've solved all our problems here on Earth, the old guy with the hat asks. And the young kid says, sounds reasonable. So what's the timeline for solving all problems? 10 years, 15 years. There are certain problems that humanity has faced for ages that AI will, I'm sure, help us solve. But the thing, and this is why I study service innovation, and I guess I'll go to my next slide. The reason I study service science and service innovation is because every technological advance, and I mean everything. In fact, I offered a student group one time $1,000 prize. Come up with an example of a technology that caused no harm to any stakeholders. I can remember one person said buttons. When buttons were invented, what harm can a button do? And I said, well, have you heard of choking hazards for children? I remember when I had a little baby around the house, we couldn't have the buttons laying out. There's a choking hazard. Oh, okay. Every innovation, every advance, every technology has a harm to some stakeholders. And maybe it's accidents, or maybe it's bad actors. Like my biggest worry about artificial intelligence is bad actors using it for bad purposes, scamming people, things like that. But every technological advance has potential benefits, and it has potential harms if it's used by bad actors. And what we study in service science and service innovation, and this nonprofit that I'm helping these days, that IBM helped start, is this issue of service innovation. Here's a little bit about me. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you do connect with me on LinkedIn, don't just send a connection request. Send a connection request with a little message. Thanks for your talk at EIT Digital, so I know you're a real person, because I get a lot of fake connection requests from fake people. Talk about a problem with generative AI. But check out the book, Service in the AI Era, if you like what I've said and want to learn a little bit more. This is about me. And thank you for participating today. You're all awesome. And I'm going to shift out of presentation mode so I can see the screen and see if I have any questions. And it's 6:43, so I think I have about 10 minutes. I know you're shy. People don't like to ask questions. It seems universal everywhere. But if you have questions for me, I'd love to try to engage with you. And I'm clicking on Q&A. Okay. Just to note, I can't see the meeting chat, only the QA is available for me. Okay, I couldn't reply to the survey. Oh, I see. That could be a problem. Maybe that's why we didn't get the survey results. Okay. Okay, so Eduardo says, thanks, take the risk, amazing talk. Okay, cheers, Eduardo. Europe is the second phase of building the world's digital twin, Destination Earth, embraced and funded by EU level. Cool, thank you, Evguro. I don't know about that. I will check that out. I'm going to take a screenshot right now so I don't forget to. Thank you very much. Olivia, please use the following link to fill in the poll. Oh, okay. We are having an unexpected issue with the chat. Please bear with us while we try to solve it. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. I'll wait a minute, and then if there's no questions, we can turn it over to Marco.
Oh, there's actually your poll result in the chat now.
Oh, thank you, Marco. Okay, poll result. Ooh, very nice. Okay, so how often are you using generative AI tools? 4 said never, 5 said occasionally, at least once a week, 10, multiple times a day, 11. Wow, this is a very advanced group because most of it's skewed towards the high end. Very good. How many generative AI tools have you used? 2 said none. Very good. You got to start somewhere. 8 people said 1. 16 said a few, and only 4 said over a dozen. Yeah, I'll just mention this is a slightly more advanced, or maybe time has passed and more people are using these tools, which is great. But it's a good distribution. There's no time like the present. If you haven't used any tools, jump in today, give one a try. It's so easy and so fun. In the use cases that I have, I'll maybe just mention, if you do go out to the, I'll scroll back here. I think I can take a minute. I'll try to wrap up in just 2 minutes if there's no questions, but I will go back. I was very proud of this this I generated. Usually when I have to give a talk, I go in and get some generative AI stuff for my talk. And I was invited to give a talk up in San Francisco at the Andreessen Horowitz venture company. They're investing in a lot of AI companies, but they had a visiting group from the UK actually, and they were bringing all their customers over to Silicon Valley to learn the latest on AI. They invited me to give a talk. So I generated this particular image for that event, and I thought it was quite good. You know, it really illustrated the productivity and quality advances that were coming. But if you want more use cases, I hope you can see on my screen that URL. It's just service-science.info/archives/6521-6521. Take a screenshot or just type it in. You'll see a blog post that I've started with a number of my use cases. And I urge you to go out there. I have use cases for students that I'm mentoring on learning generative AI. You might find those interesting. I was delighted when some seniors I know, people in their 80s, asked me to come to the terraces at Los Gatos. It's a retirement community. The average age of people there is 85, and I taught them how to use generative AI, and it was a blast. There were people there who had always wanted to write a book. One guy wanted to create an opera and never done it. A lot of people had business model ideas that they had never generated a full business plan for. I was there just at my computer, listening to each individual, typing it in, showing them the result that I was getting from ChatGPT. They were very, very excited. These were people 85 years old, and their creativity was becoming unleashed. And I liked what one of the gentlemen there said. He said, this generative AI is taking away my excuse. I have no excuse for not starting to do this thing I've always dreamed of doing. And I said, absolutely. This is absolutely the power of generative AI. Just type in what you're thinking about, and the more information you give it about the way you're thinking of it, the more you're going to get back a creative response. So a lot of people call these things their digital muse. And that's a good way to think about it at this stage. It's an impressive digital muse, but don't rely on it to be exactly correct. There was the one lawyer who tried it. Oh, this is so good. It's generating my law case for me. And then he goes into court and presents it, and it's all made up. And there's no precedent, and he gets fired. So use it ethically. If you're using it, say you've used it. Double check it carefully. It will get better. I hope you had fun in this talk. I did. I'm going to look at the Q&A one more time, and let's see if there's any questions here. Oh, there are a few. I'm going to try to wrap up, though, in 1 minute and hand over, but let me see. Okay. Okay. Europe is second phase of building the world's digital twin. Okay, I'll check that out. Okay. All right.
And
I think I'm done. And I'll
Jim, Jim, sorry, I think that you have two questions which were waiting while you were intervening. One of them is, are you using a tool to build your digital twin?
I'm actually using, no, the answer is no. There are people that I'm following that are using specific tools. What I'm doing is I typically have ChatGPT open, Google's Bard, Anthropic's Claude, and Bing, and I'm asking it questions about how should I go about building my digital twin. So right now I'm still in the design phase of building my digital twin, but I do have people that I follow. One of them is called Kyle Shannon. He's part of an organization that I'm part of that he is probably the most advanced person I know building a digital twin. I'll add that to my blog post of use cases. So I haven't added the digital twin yet to that blog post, but I'll try to get around to adding a link to Kyle Shannon and the tools that he's using. Now, I tend to be I'm more of a design guy. I like to look at the possibilities before just jumping in. I know other people, and it's a fine way to be. They just jump in and build a rough prototype. I'm more like, oh, let me see what other people are doing and what tools are out there and what do I want it to really do? What's the first use case? So I'm still in the design stage of building my digital twin.
Okay.
I've thought about it a lot. Is there another question I don't see?
Yes, there is another question. There were rumors about AGI being achieved in OpenAI during the Sam Altman's drama. What are your views on AGI, its future, and it's possible to achieve it in considering the current state of tech? So what are your views? Its
Okay.
future, and it's possible to achieve it considering the current state of tech.
I'm going to sound pessimistic to some people. I like to think of myself as realistic. I don't think we're anywhere near AGI. Maybe by 2035, 2040. I know there's people that say it's going to happen next week. I know there's people I follow who say it's already happened. But I guess I have a higher bar for what I mean by AGI than most people, including I think Sam Altman, who's a very smart guy, and I just maybe I'm a contrarian, but I don't think that we're quite close to AI as AGI as people think. That said, Q star is if you go out and look on YouTube for AI explained, that's one of the people I follow. He just did a very, very, very good YouTube video, only 15 minutes long, I think, maybe 30 minutes on Q star. And what I think they've done, and I think it is an important step towards AGI, is it sounds like for mathematics, where there's truth in mathematics, quote unquote truth. 2 + 2 = 4. So I think what they've done with Q star is they've managed to get an AI that can actually do simple arithmetic and not make mistakes. That's a big achievement, believe it or not. And I do think that what they're doing in Q star, at least based on what the AI Explained guy said in some papers that I've read, he cites papers on xArchive that you can go out and look at. It looks like they're starting to move towards, and actually tomorrow I'm giving a talk at Next CoLab on this, is they're starting to shift to a generate, test, and debug architecture, meaning right now you got a stochastic parrot, a monkey at the typewriter. It's just generating, blindly generating based on statistical probabilities. And it's pretty good because there's so much data and it's got so much compute power. It's pretty good at generating. But where's the test? Well, I think Q star is now they're figuring out a way to create a reward function for the generative AI so that as it does things, it breaks it up into smaller pieces. I think this is sometimes called train of thought, and it looks for proofs that each step is correct. Now in mathematics, you can actually, that's what proofs are all about. You can prove every step. So if they're training up a reward function like they did with AlphaGo for let's break it down and let's try to prove every step, and that's improving our accuracy and removing hallucinations, that is fantastic. That is real progress towards AGI. However, if what they're doing, they could be doing other things and that wouldn't be, in my mind, steps towards AGI. But if they're shifting to a generate, test, and debug architecture, and they're starting to get, okay, beyond mathematics, what is there? Science. Oh, how does science prove things? Well, it's more like there's authoritative places where knowledge is published in the top journals by the top people. And so it's, maybe that's how you validate that something's correct. And then you get, a step further. So authoritative sources of news. So maybe they're training the generative AI to have more of a step-by-step, everything that I generate, I should break it down into like 20 steps, and I should look for authoritative sources or proofs on every step. And that's going to, statistically, that's going to increase the probability that this is right. Is that a model of the world? No, I don't think so. I do not believe you can have AGI until you have an artificial intelligence that has something called an episodic memory. And I've written about this. So you can go out and look at this. So I have a pretty high bar for what AGI is. I don't think we're anywhere near achieving my hard bar, but I think a lot of people have much lower bars, and some people, the bar is so low, they think we've already achieved it. And I think I'm pretty much at the end of my time, so thank you for the questions. Thank you for the attention. I had fun. Thank you, EIT Digital, again, for inviting me, and I love to hear Marco now and get bits under our fingernails as we learn how to use these tools better. So back to you.
Thank you, Jim. So let me share my screen. So hi, my name is Marco and I work in developer relations. That means I feel like I'm at the sweet spot of what generative AI can do for us at the moment. So I work in a combination of software development and marketing, and I have a little bit of background in both. That means I can and do use generative AI for like a lot of things that marketing people would do and a lot of things that developers would do and like, yeah, what developer relations people would do. I do not have an as impressive background in AI as Jim has. I'm working on it, don't worry. But I am a very informed generative AI enthusiast. And I had this moment, and we will mention the date again, where I had a revelation. I was in a little bit of a rut that, like as a developer, I always had side projects I was building. And I haven't done that for quite some time. You know, there was this pandemic and stuff. Things like became a little bit mentally more draining, and I didn't know how to lift myself out of it. And suddenly something was released that actually allowed me to move a lot faster and to like catch up on a lot of things that I wanted to learn all the time, and I didn't. But we will mention it again. So I'm Berlin-based. You might see a little bit of shift in the lighting on my face because it's getting darker from this side, but don't wonder when something like that happens. So we are here to talk about generative AI in general. Like Jim already mentioned a lot of the things that led up to the point where we are at now. And then we will talk about what I call the iPhone moment and how that connects to the topic that we are actually like all here to hear about, which is ChatGPT itself. And then we will talk about like, what does this actually mean? What is in there in ChatGPT? And how can we actually use it, and how can we like get most value out of it for ourselves, and what lays actually beyond. So generative AI, I looked up, and it's defined as a type of artificial intelligence that creates new original content or data ranging from text and images to music and code. It learns from vast amounts of existing data and uses patterns and structures from this data to generate similar but unique outputs. And another source I queried told me generative AI is like a smart robot that can make its own drawings, stories, or songs. It learns by looking at lots of pictures, stories, and music, and it can make up new ones that are kind of like those, but still different and new. So let's find out how this actually happened. So I guess the history overview that Jim gave us is like a lot more detailed than that. And I have like honestly not been present for most of the things that happened here. So most of it I had to look up about, I've actually forgot some of the names that Jim just mentioned, but you can look it up on SlideShare in Jim's slides. So we had the early like mentions of AI in the 1950s. I think it was 1956 with the first AI workshop there. And then we had fields like machine learning, which is just a sub-portion of statistics, emerging in the 1980s. We had neural networks and deep neural networks like in the decades after, and in the 2010s, something like again began to evolve. And again, it's a generative adversarial networks. It's basically like two different kind of AIs. One is trained to judge if something is actually successfully created, and the other one just gives it something it creates and then like improves its own output based on the feedback it gets from the judgmental part of the GAN. And then, and Jim mentioned that as well, in 2017 there was a paper called Attention is All You Need. As you can see, most of the authors have some Google address, and that actually means that they were working for Google in some like capacity. And they actually work for, I think it was DeepMind, don't name me on the details. But this was basically the start to what we like perceive in most discussions, and I can only talk about my bubble, but I think that's a pretty good representation of what's happening like in the broader consumer world. What we talk about as AI usually when we talk about this at the moment, which is generative AI. And most of the time we are talking about large language models. And in particular, we are talking about generative pre-trained transformers. And there's something in there that should all look familiar to us, which is the GPT. And that's why we are sitting here, right? We are talking about a tool called ChatGPT, which is a generative pre-trained transformer. And this is, I think, like relatively important to remember. It's not only like a cool party knowledge that you can show off with, but what this actually means, you might want to look up in more detail so that you are like better informed in terms of what you're doing there. From the polls that Jim put and like your answers, I think that most of you have used like some of these tools already. Maybe we can put out another poll with like who has used ChatGPT in particular. I'm not sure if this like if the feedback cycle is as long as with the one that Jim put up. Then maybe we will come back to that later. And yeah, before I dive into what is actually part of ChatGPT itself, I would like to mention some of the tools that Jim also already mentioned. So first and foremost, there are some of the big players, which is Google Bard, of course, like one of the big competitors of OpenAI in Google, and founded by alumni, I think, of OpenAI. Anthropic put out another very large language model, which is called Claude. And we are now in version Claude 2.1, I think. And I initially wanted to show you like some of those, but I do not have access actually. And this is why I think personally, I also have a slight preference to ChatGPT because of access from where I sit. So I'm in Berlin, in Germany, in the EU. And yeah, I still do not have access to Claude 2. And it makes me very sad. So I could, of course, like do some tricks to get there, but I really don't want to have to do that. So, and apart from these other large language models like Google Bard and Claude, like basically chatbots that you can use as a product in the same way as you can use ChatGPT. We have others. So we have what's now since a couple of weeks called the Microsoft Copilot. So what was called the Bing chat, I think, not too long ago. We have Meta, which is a huge player. They have open source models published called Llama 2. I think Llama 3 is also available or almost available. Also, don't nail me on the details, which is a German expression, I think, nailing me on something. And then we have Hugging Face. Hugging Face is actually like a very big hub for what's happening in open source AI. So if you go to huggingface.co, you will find like a lot of publicly available, trained and unrefined or specifically refined open source large language models and similar things, and also for rent the computational power to actually have them running. So if you want to play around with something, that's your place to be. And there, actually, you can also go to like what I actually do almost on a daily basis, looking at the trending models for the day or for the week sometimes, and you will see where the whole area is currently like drifting. So you see what was recently released, what is popular, and it gives you like a very good overview of yeah, what's happening that day, and also where like, and specifically how fast the whole area is actually evolving. And of course, beyond like these large language models and these conversational interfaces to create more text or text-like things, you have other things like, for example, GitHub Copilot, which is also based on a refined version of GPT-4, which is the basis of like some flavors of ChatGPT, which is specifically trained to produce code that comes from the company GitHub. It's in the name, right? GitHub Copilot, which is also owned by Microsoft, and it's the world's largest, I think, Git hosting, like code hosting, let's say, company. So they have access to a lot of code that they could train their stuff on. Then we have tools like Runway. Runway has a whole suite of tools, some of them specifically geared towards creating animated things like videos, GIFs, something like that. And we have something like Midjourney. Midjourney is probably one of the biggest DALL-E competitors. I used to be a huge fan of Midjourney until DALL-E 3 hit the road also fairly recently. And if you are into specific artistic styles, I think Midjourney is still, yeah, could be your tool of choice. So what I'm actually wanting to say, I have my personal preferences. You have to find your personal preferences actually. So I was looking into what can I like generally recommend people to look into and to work with. And the only thing that I can like really on a broad basis recommend is look into ChatGPT, because ChatGPT just integrates such a broad set of tools. And this can also be problematic, but maybe we will come back to that a little bit later, because I have a lot of stuff to show you still. I think I'm still good in time. So then also, who has used alternatives? Probably also something that we can put in the poll. And we can look at it at a later point then. And like it's close to what Jim already asked, right? And I think the majority of people, right, I can see it here, when he asked for how many generative AI tools have you used, we have the majority of people, so more than half of respondents said a few, which equals here like fewer than a dozen tools. And there's more in the chat. So ChatGPT, yeah, most of you used it. Okay. For the few people who didn't, it's a big recommendation. Just try it. Just try it. And like it's like when people started using Google, if your first try didn't succeed, just try to refine your questions. So, oh, next one is also there. Alternatives to ChatGPT. We have like 2/3 have used alternatives. That's good. And oh, the third poll was already answered. Oh, that's interesting. So most of you do not have a ChatGPT Plus subscription, something that we are coming back to in much detail, and you might reconsider that decision later then. So what I actually wanted to say, there are so many tools out there at the moment, and most of them are very much specialized in some niches. And I would greatly recommend to you to try these specialized tools for whatever you're doing. And just you have to bring a lot of like good judgment to the table for that. But I will come back later to what that actually means. But I think most of us should be at a point where we have at least tried a few dozen of these tools to actually see what fits our personal workflow. I will get back to all of these things in a couple of slides, couple of minutes, or towards the end. So there was this moment in time, the iPhone moment, how I like to call it, that changed a lot of things on a lot of levels. So like back then when Steve Jobs on stage had his like one more thing moment and for the first time presented the iPhone, no one apart from the hype could expect how fundamentally this actually changed society, right? So we had telephones before. I also had like a telephone with like a touchscreen, I think even, but the capabilities that were unlocked by having a device that was intentionally geared for participation, like not initially, but soon after, when the App Store came up, for example, or like this device that was basically heralding the arrival of the smartphone era. And without the smartphones, we would not be where we are in terms of social media, for example, another big moment that had unprecedented impact on society and was disruptive. It just changed everything. So like people who kept building phones like they were built before basically fell behind, period. So no one could not try to copy like the iPhone. I sound like a fanboy. There were probably like things, phones, technologies before that went in that direction, but this was, I think, like the biggest attempt to intentionally shift things into a direction like it took then eventually. So, and we had another moment like this on November 30th, 2022. So actually only 2 days from now in a year ago, so we are not even a year in, there was this gentleman with the company OpenAI who released a product called ChatGPT. I recently listened to a podcast from OpenAI's CTO, Mira Murati, where she actually explained that they never expected ChatGPT to have so much impact. And it was actually like an internal technology demo on steroids that they released. And then they like only slowly found out how much impact this could actually have as a product. So for the people who have not followed what happened the weekend before this one, there was like a lot of, let's say, things going on inside of OpenAI. There were a lot of things happening connected to Q-Star that Jim mentioned, but I don't want to go too much into detail. Let's say that I thought about just putting the logo of OpenAI up here, but this gentleman, Sam Altman, that's also on the slide here, is actually very much fortified in his position as the head of this company and as one of the head figures of generative AI in the public perception. And this will not change anytime soon, especially what happened after, like, what did Jim call it and some other people? This Silicon Valley soap opera that happened there. There was like, it was very interesting to follow it live. There were lots of ups and downs, and now we are back where we started with a little bit of changes that actually like fortified the position of this gentleman. So follow him as well if you know. I want to know how it like goes on with artificial intelligence. What made ChatGPT so impressive in terms of numbers? I think Jim also mentioned that already. It pulverized any pre-existing consumer adoption record that had existed up to that point. We had 100 million users within 2 months. And I didn't know about TikTok back then. I only knew about Instagram, and it took them 2.5 years to get to that point. Technically, we could discuss this. There was this tool called Threads from Meta that had more user adoption than ChatGPT, but they basically kind of like started from a different point. So they started from billions of potential users and made 100 million in a short time. So, and ChatGPT basically did this from scratch. So I think also the sustained usage in ChatGPT was a lot higher. So I will let this exist as the record, at least when I will talk about these things. And we had an event called the OpenAI Developer Day, the first of its kind, recently. And there, Sam Altman announced numbers that were in the ballpark, or I think it's exactly what he said, of 100 million weekly active users on ChatGPT. And I don't have a slide what that actually means in relation to most of the other tools, but I think it might be more than most of the other ones. So probably here TikTok is again a little bit different, but they have like other mechanisms of like playing with attention. I have to check it, but it's still a super impressive number, especially that they actually could sustain like these numbers and probably also the growth then. However, and that's the sad news for something that we will come back to, and also something that connects to when you look in the chat that around 2/3 of you do not have a ChatGPT Plus subscription. For the time since the OpenAI Dev Day, there was so much demand for account signups that they could not keep up with the computing resources, so that they paused subscriptions for the moment. Stay tuned, they will probably come back, and they have a lot of technological partners to back the compute, but you probably might not be able to like replicate what I want to show you today, some of the things at least. And then in the wake of like ChatGPT's rise, there was an explosion, a Cambrian explosion, basically, of AI startups. Many of them, I would even go as far as saying most of them, have a problem that they do not deliver enough additional value on top of the services that they use from other companies like OpenAI, for example. So with basically every sentence Sam Altman said on the Dev Day, like a cohort of them died because OpenAI just integrated whatever they delivered as value add. And that will continue to be problematic for startups. I guess like a product market fit or like a the value add a company builds is always like the problematic thing. We will come back to a couple of things regarding that later. Let's have a look at ChatGPT itself. So I actually plan to show this like directly. Asia, can you raise your hand when you see your ChatGPT UI? Yep. Good. Okay. So then let me show you a couple of things. So when you log into ChatGPT, you do not have to like sign up for the Plus subscription. That's the good news. And even better news is that even the free version gets better and better every time that OpenAI adds stuff here. So when we look at what we have here, it's actually like one of the most simplistic user interfaces you can imagine. So essentially you have your chat box down here. You have like a couple of suggestions, what you can do here, and you have a couple of other things. But really the most important thing is this thing down here. And we can basically ask it something, I don't know, like say, hello in the 5 most commonly spoken languages in the world. Oops. Well, I guess it will correct that. And we have English, hello, Mandarin, ni hao, Spanish, hola, Hindi, namaste, and Arabic, assalamu alaikum. And it was also pretty quick, right? And we are working here with ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo, it's actually called internal. And this is like basically it. This is how your interactions with ChatGPT work. It's probably something you do all the time with your close ones, your colleagues. It's just a chat. That's the name, ChatGPT, right? And most of us have used this. I don't tell you anything new here, but let's quickly go through like all the elements that we have in here. Maybe we find something that some of you didn't know yet. So we have the possibility to tell OpenAI, yeah, this was good, this was bad. We can refresh it actually, and we can copy it directly to clipboard. Those two here help OpenAI to improve what they're doing. We have this button up here that probably some of you didn't know yet, which actually allows us to share a conversation. So you basically can copy the link and pass this on to someone else so that they can continue inside of their ChatGPT, not manipulating your original, I think. Yeah, to continue that on their own. This is pretty impressive. So you don't have to hand around screenshots. You can hand around like complete conversations. And you will see that you have this little arrow here that used to be some other icon, and you can open and you have a history of your former conversations. You can like delete them. You can also here share them. You can rename them. They are named automatically based on the context of the conversation after you initially started it. There are a couple of hiccups that I will show you later that might happen, and you can delete the chat, right? So then you have in all versions, even the free version, the possibility to customize your instructions. So you have like these two boxes here, and it will tell you what you can actually do with that. So you can tell ChatGPT more context about you. That means like when you want to let it know that you are, I don't know, that you work in developer relations and what developer relations is maybe, or is for you. And that you are based in a specific location when you think that is important for whatever ChatGPT should like know about you, incorporating in the answers. And then you have the possibility to fine tune how you want ChatGPT to answer. So you will see when I show you the examples in my ChatGPT Plus account that I told it to be more casual, and you will see it using a lot of emojis, which is sometimes pretty annoying, but you can like fine tune this, and you can probably also have a conversation with it where it will help you to fine tune all these things. So the possibilities here are like great. And ChatGPT has the tendency to be very verbal. So to like tell you a lot of things that you don't care about at that moment, because you ask a very specific question, you want a very specific answer, you can let it know here that you are preferring like short, concise answers. But you really have to find the sweet spot. And since this will be applicable for all conversations you start from that point on, it should be more generic. And like if you have things you want to let it know during specific conversations, you should put that into like the prompts that you put for the new conversations itself. We will come back to like some of these things that we have there. Then that's about it in the free interface. That's already super powerful. So like when everything started, this was all we had. And it wasn't even as pretty as it is now. And still it was, I don't know, it was amazing for me. It unstuck me, basically. It made and makes so many mistakes and hallucinations with a lot of things, especially I started doing a lot of programming languages I only superficially knew back then. And I had to touch every bit of code I created with that. I had to touch like every text I created with that. And I enjoyed every second of it because finally there was someone who I could ask the most stupid questions, no judgment, nothing at all. And someone when I'm an ambivert, that means I like to talk to people. I would love to stand in front of you now, and I would love to have conversations later in private. But I also need moments, for example, when I code where I'm on my own, where I can do just what I want to do, being like entering flow state. It's an amazing form of meditation. If you don't know flow state, you have to look that up as well. And ChatGPT allowed me to do like all of these things at once. So I had a conversation partner that I could ask things that can also make me unstuck. There's this concept of, I don't have one here now, of rubber ducking. So basically every developer or many developers, every developer I know has a little rubber duck on their desk. And when they are stuck, they tell their problems to the rubber duck, and the rubber duck just listens and you get unstuck. So you basically have the most advanced rubber duck with ChatGPT, and no grudges held when you suddenly stop the conversation and dive back into code. It's just amazing. But this was just like the very first step. As you can see here, there are like slight nudges that try to push you to go further, because in their smartest and most capable model that includes DALL-E, browsing, and more, you can do even more things, right? So you will have unlimited messages, interactions, and history in the free version as well. You have access to the GPT 3.5 model, and you have access on web, iOS, and Android. So you can also use the free version on the native apps. And I will show you a little bit about that later as well. And also like one of my most favorite use cases I had so far. But with the Plus model, and I think this is a vast understatement what you have in here, you have access to GPT-4, you have access to browse, create, and the usage of GPT, something we come back to later, and access to additional tools like DALL-E, browsing, advanced data analysis, and more. So there's basically like just some side note, but it's actually pretty amazing what's happening here. There's the next step of ChatGPT Enterprise. I will not go too deep into that, or actually not at all. If you are in the need to have an enterprise contract, you probably have a whole department that can make sure that it has everything you need in there. So with that being said, we jump over to ChatGPT Plus. As you can tell immediately up here, I'm able to use my GPT-4 version. And I can already tell you, like, let's jump back to this conversation here. When I put the same, I will also leave the typo in, honestly. When I put the same query in here, you can already tell it's a little bit slower. That's something you have to live with. Even if this model is now called GPT-4 Turbo, it will be slower than before. So let's see what we have as the output. We have Mandarin, Chinese, we have Spanish, English, Hindi, and Arabic. The order is a bit different, but it is largely the same. When I did this with the GPT-4 model before the release of GPT Turbo about 1.5 weeks ago, it was very different. French was on the list, and I think Arabic was not. So there are differences in the models, and like you always have to keep that in mind when you want to automate something, and that relies on some other party maybe updating something, the large language model in the background of ChatGPT, for example. You will not necessarily always get the same stable outputs. If you rely on that, you have to put other measures in place. But that's like a whole different like code and automation discussion. So, but something to keep in mind. What else do we have here? So for me personally, the biggest difference here, and like one of the most important things, is just this paperclip down here, because this paperclip actually allows you to upload files basically. And those files can be of like a lot of different formats, and it's like you can do so many different things with that. A couple of things I will show you in the next half hour. But I don't think that I even like properly scratched the surface of what is actually possible, because we are like still so early. We are not even a year in, right? And as a consumer product, this is even like, yeah, even newer. So let's look around what else we have here. So we still have our share button. We can do all the same things. We have GPT-4. So it also lets us know that we are limited to 40 messages in 3 hours. So I try to not to send too many messages that I don't need to. I also have fallback styles for everything. But yeah, I clicked the wrong one. So I have a history. So I actually have kind of a longer history that I have with ChatGPT that goes back 1 year basically, but I also pretty soon started like deleting conversations that I don't need anymore. So everything you see here, and like probably a couple hundred other conversations I had with it down there, I still want to keep, because they are first of all used to improve my experience, not only mine. I come back to that in a side sentence later. But they will also be used to create context. I found out something that I did not know about and that I did not find in the documentation. Maybe I just missed it. When I ask it something now, and I will ask it something from my very first long conversation with it, is like I asked it to write me a bedtime story about a princess fighting space pirates. Don't ask me why I asked that back then. And this princess was actually called Lyra in the first one, Lyra. And the last time I asked it, there's a live demo. Once upon a time, it has the same name. So either there's a very famous space pirate princess called Lyra, or it learned from a prior conversation just for the conversation with me. So that is also why I keep some of my other conversations. There's a lot about code, a lot about career stuff, and a lot about things that I use in my daily life. In the poll that Jim put out, we talked about a lot of that a lot of you use it daily, and I would be like, I don't know, I want to hear, put it in the QA. What are you using it for? I want to like hear and discuss all of these things. So of course, you can also in the Plus version fall back to GPT 3.5. Just for the sake of speed, for example. If you just want quick answers, they don't need to be too much in depth, it's all fine. You might have heard, depending on when you last used ChatGPT, that we had initially, I think, a cutoff date of September 2021. And it was then pushed to April 2022, I think. And if we ask it now, when is your cutoff date? We have something fairly recent, April 2023, and they are accelerating actually with like keeping this up to date. So there are also like a lot of startup techniques, programming libraries that allow you to add additional data to these large language models. And we will look into some of the very easy to use things in a couple of minutes. So you don't have to put as much recent data into it if you need it. That's already like a very good thing. When we look back up here into the models that are available, you have also the possibility to use plugins. And I will just like briefly brush over it. So because plugins were OpenAI's first approach to add something for community contribution. And why this is not like the way to go anymore, we will come back soon. So there were also like on and off kind of capabilities, like the browsing with Bing functionality, for example. There it was practical to have something like the web pilot. This was the one I used. I don't know how many alternatives there are in the plugins. And like, if this is the best, I have absolutely no opinion about that. It was just the first one I stumbled upon. You can have YouTube Summarizer, Wolfram Alpha. Some people might know if you really like need facts, it can use the Wolfram Alpha API to like cross fact check numbers it uses, something like that. There are pretty cool things in there that basically just connect ChatGPT to some other functionality through APIs usually. However, most of these things were like the startups from the Cambrian explosion I showed earlier, they were superseded by functionality that was added later, like image creation, browsing is back, and like these advanced analysis features also kind of like make many of these here obsolete. We had things like, I think this was in the beginning, the coolest part, like talking to PDFs. There were like plenty of services being created, like talking to PDFs. However, when you jump to ChatGPT with GPT version 4, you can just upload your PDF and then you can ask questions about this PDF. So first cohort of startups out of business, unless they added some other functionality, convenience features or whatever on top of it. I hope they had that in the roadmap and did that. So one of the most powerful features that I think I did not even like find the best applications for, and there certainly are, is this what they just here call analysis in a side note. So when you tell it something like draw me the graph for e to the power of x, so an exponential function, then it will start something that it calls analyzing. And you can see here that it's actually creating Python code. And you can see what Python code it is creating. And this Python code can also be executed then in a sandbox environment. That means it has a very limited set of, it has a very limited set of libraries that it can actually include. So ChatGPT itself knows what libraries it has, and it does not have web access. That means you cannot like randomly vary this code. However, it can still produce a lot of cool things. And then you get things like that. This is like a... Okay, it worked anyway. So sometimes when it gets errors, and that's also an amazing feature actually, when it really, so in this case, it was just the std out, I think, when it encounters errors, because even code examples are not immune to hallucinations, it will just try again. That's absolutely amazing. So we have here the exponential graph of e to the power of x. And this was like the least impressive example I could pick probably. So I actually intended to grab some data set from somewhere and show you that you can throw a CSV file, an Excel file, something in there, and then ask ChatGPT for insights on the data and for visualizations on these insights. And you don't even have to specify how these insights should look like, what these should contain, what you are expecting, what you are looking for actually. You can, you don't have to. It will just find like outliers, anomalies. And then when I have like an inconclusive graph, you can ask it for regression on this data and everything. You only have to know, yeah, in some cases you don't have to know anything, but that you need to have insights on the data. And it's like the most impressive thing that I can imagine. Then when we go on, so we looked at this side note here that we have analysis, and we mentioned DALL-E 3 a couple of times. You saw the monkey and the stochastic parrot that Jim had. And I think I will show you the slides for that, because that's just like quicker. So we talked about these things. And I uploaded a picture of me, and I sometimes you have to specify that it's actually not a public figure, because ChatGPT as a product is actually moderated and has filters in place, which also contain filters that you cannot like create deepfake pictures of like a figure or so. There are ways to actually go around these safeguards when you, for example, give it a picture of someone and tell it it's a picture of you. That's a pretty easy one to go around one of these safeguards. It didn't learn that from me, but it's probably also in every other YouTube video. And I ask it to make a 3D animation character of myself. Pretty cool 3D animation character, but it doesn't really like look like me, right? Then I asked a couple of like corrections, to make it blonde, give it a man bun, and it gave me this. It's closer. It's pretty flattering, I would say. I wish I had a beard like that. But then it put the earring. I don't have an earring. You didn't see an earring on the picture. And then it took me, I think, more than 25 approaches in that conversation actually to have it generate the proper image with a man bun and blonde, which is also very complicated to create apparently, and without an earring, because an earring apparently goes hand in hand with a blonde man bun. I don't know what data it was trained on, but the productivity explosion that Jim talked about always has to be taken with a grain of salt. This stuff makes you fast. This stuff makes you productive. This stuff can make you unstuck, but don't expect magic, right? So it will not deliver you like maybe an intern or a junior employee. It will not always deliver. Also, depending on the input you give, same with those employees, it will only get you so and so far. You will always have to have an eye on it. Of course, it's improving and it's getting better. Especially, it's also getting better with like following instructions. And I could have been more precise probably as well. So I also have to learn in the process. But you have to be prepared that you will also have to do something, and you will not be out of a job. That's the good news. You will not be out of a job anytime soon. So let's talk about other things you can do with that. So basic prompting. So you can do very like easy things. Like I randomly chose Pokemon. I don't have anything to do with Pokemon. What are Pokemon, for example? Like I expected there's a lot of data this was trained on, because like large language model was trained on large language data. So, and it's pretty slow today. So usually this is also a little bit faster. So don't worry about that. So it will give me a long explanation. Oh, it's not that long. Okay, probably because I had in my custom instructions that I'm looking for like short examples. Then let's ask for give me a list of 5 popular Pokemon. Okay. Okay, as you can see, it gives me a list with the name of a Pokemon and some description. You can always stop the output here. And then when you do that, you can also edit what you wrote, and then you can save and submit. And you will see that you can switch between like the 2 versions. And then you can also switch between the alternative generated answers that you had there. I rarely have and want to make use of this feature, but it's there. Good to know. And then when this is done, you can ask it like to make things different. And I think for time's sake, I will jump back to the slides. So you can ask it basically anything. And here, this is like the most simple question that I could come up with. I asked about the 5 popular ones, and then I asked it to make the list shorter. Could also have asked it to give me more, to make the descriptions more extensive, to give me more context about any point in there. And you can do that over and over again. You can iterate over the result that you get from one of these prompts, right? And there's like, for me, most of the one of the most powerful features. Same with this one here, right? So this was like an iterative creation of these images. I like the Jim's image with the monkey and the parrot, and it was one shot, right? So what if you are like a creative that wants to have some of the details different, and then you can just like go on. And then there are ways to make the output more stable, or you can have it more creative. Endless possibilities. You can have like a lot of other different formats. You can have it print in a table. This thing can interpret Markdown, as far as I remember correctly, which is like a very simple like text structuring language. You can ask it to reformat things. So I asked it about a poem about Pokemon, and it gave me like one like paragraph about any of the Pokemon, which I found a bit too long. So this is actually something I use it a lot for, to make things shorter. And then I ask it for 2 lines per Pokemon, and it's still an amazing poem, right? So I will not read it out loud, but I guess you get the point. And then you can like ask for any type of output, essentially. So as a programmer, I use JSON a lot. There's a data exchange format, endless possibilities. Then you will always have access to everything you said before. As I gave in the example with the space pirate queen, that apparently, which is like to my knowledge not documented, it will also reference back older conversations, but within one conversation, it will always know what happened before. This was a bit flaky in the past, so it lost context very quickly, but like a couple of months ago, we still had a context window in GPT-4 of 4,000 tokens. One token, for the ease of calculation, let's say one token is equal to one word. It's actually like 0.75 on average or something like that. But let's say that. So you had 4,000 words that you could throw in there. That's a lot for like an essay or so, but not for like a more complex documentation, book instructions, SOPs, you name it. But now we are at 128,000. And before that, the record holder was Claude, I think, from Anthropic with 100,000. They like one-upped it with a 200,000 token context window now. But I think with 128,000 inside of ChatGPT-4, we can throw in a whole book. And that should be enough for most contexts. However, it gets better. We will get there. I will try to rush through. So basically here, you have access to the whole conversation. And it was a very short one, but still. There are a lot of prompting techniques. I just randomly chose one that is called create, where you specify the character. So you often start with, as a specialist in generative AI, for example, I want you to do this and that, and the output should look like this and that, and then you can like adjust, you can do a lot of things, but ultimately I think it doesn't matter. You will find prompting techniques nowadays with all sorts of acronyms, and there are a dime a dozen. What matters in the end is what we learned with when Google came out, and I have no idea about the demographic data of the audience here, but I guess we're all in the same couple of decade range. So when Google came out, people needed to learn how to ask questions because people were used to getting answers from people that they could like iteratively improve the question that they asked with, right? With Google, you had one shot. You had to throw the question, result wasn't what you want to have. You could like vary it in the next one, but you didn't know what actually you should have to put as additional information. And the same we have again here with like these conversational interfaces. And but we are back to where we were before, that these conversation interfaces actually can tell you what other information you can give them in order for them to provide you more or better, more higher qualitative information that you might want to have. And they can iteratively, together with you, improve the prompt that you give it. And they, in that process, improve you as a prompt writer. There are so many techniques and like things that like scientific papers are written about out there, like Chain of Thought, which I think already has like 5 follow-up theories, like how to get to the best result, to the point where you have like some a less powerful large language model, let's say like GPT 3.5 Turbo, that can decide to what other language model to delegate your request to, so that you have something that's fast and simple that just does the decision to what other language model things are posted. And this is also rumored that GPT-4 is actually composed of. It's not one language model. It's a set of language models that are like refined for certain tasks. Of course, we saw we have DALL-E 3, for example. This is like fine-tuned for image generation. We have the GPT-4V, the vision model that can actually accept the images and interpret what is on the images. But there are also, I think, a couple of language models in there that are fine-tuned for specific tasks and like task areas that you give it that are just text-based. I think there's no official documentation about that as well. In the end, it also doesn't matter because this will evolve. So learning this now is probably changing in a couple of weeks, if that long. So what you like have to learn is using these building blocks, as Jim called it. We have a conversation interface that will help you to get where you want to get. That's using that and like getting better at using that. This is, I think, like one of the future-proof things, and accepting that it's there and that you can use it for so many things. This is something you should do. So use cases. What I use ChatGPT for personally is like a lot of code, HTML, the least of which. I use it for blog post creation, for example, writing marketing copy, journaling sometimes. Sometimes I just like throw in something that happened over the day, or meeting notes, for example, where we have to say don't necessarily throw in sensitive data, right? Because some other companies, some other US companies, so maybe a different jurisdiction API, you throw your data in. And by default, something I probably didn't show you, you are actually subject to giving them your data for further training. You can opt out of that, but then you're like losing your history. I'm kind of fond of my history. You are not subject to that anymore when you are using ChatGPT Enterprise or when you are using OpenAI's API, but that's a different story. So you can have it with process support. I for sure used it to build this presentation. I discarded most of the recommendations it gave me because I just had like a different flow in mind. And of course, we had discussions internally, and we improved it iteratively. You can use it for brainstorming, giving you ideas in every direction. What I use it a lot for summarization. And there's also a popular comic where someone is writing like 3 bullet points, then uses AI to expand it to a fully fledged email, sends the email, and on the other end, someone uses AI to reduce this fully fledged email to 3 bullet points. So this is also an aspect of the future where we are currently going. But this is really a great feature. I also have, yeah, a small tool that I use with the API to really like summarize everything. It's just easy. It's very capable in translating. Of course, this depends on like what languages you throw in there. There are languages that are like better represented in the training data than others. Probably when you go for translating to languages like Chinese, there are other language models that probably do a better job in there because they're better geared towards Chinese. ChatGPT obviously being most capable in English. And as humans, I've heard, it tends to change tone unless further instructed to like different tones depending on the language. That's probably also part of like the training data. You can have it analyze and create sentiment. So you can ask it, like, for example, in my example, the sun is shining on this beautiful day. You can ask it to give this in the tone of a moody teenager, although it's like a very positive sentence, right? Some people just like are geared to interpret things always negative. You can ask it to, yeah, express it as an overly enthusiastic Smurf. I have no idea why I thought about that. And you can just fact check. There should be a third one here where it just says the sun is shining today. When I ask it, just reduce it to the facts. Next one, I think I have to rush now. So native apps, I will just like show you that. So there are native apps. I use mine on the iPhone a lot, especially when I'm out with a dog because I need to pay attention to the street, right? I don't have the time to look at the phone all the time and write stuff. So I just use the text input, like the speech input. And this is not your normal speech input that you have running on your phone anyway. This is an open source model from OpenAI called Whisper. And this is by far, as you might be able to hear that I have a slight German accent. And this is by far the best speech-to-text system that I had so far. Google Assistant, Alexa, I have used before. They refuse to understand. I ask in English, they answer me in German because they hear my German accent, and my girlfriend makes fun of me. Happened quite a lot. But this thing, 100% success rate so far. And it will just put the text. You can still put corrections if need be, if you use something, or you can also have it like answering you. This is, to be honest, pretty slow. So I was not impressed with that so far, but of course, also this is subject to improvement. One of the most important things, one of my favorite examples, I was tasked to buy cilantro. I didn't like, there was something in a pot that said cilantro. They didn't look like cilantro, but I'm not an expert on that, and it didn't smell much like anything. So I took a picture with the app, I asked ChatGPT and said, no, this is not cilantro, this looks like broadleaf parsley. And then I found another pot and said like, oh, this looks different than the others. Is this cilantro? It was cilantro. Whew. Task fulfilled, and we had my girlfriend cooked a fantastic meal that haven't been that amazing without the cilantro, I'm sure. Now the most important thing. There's one button we didn't look at yet. And that says, when you open the menu here, explore. And this is exactly what it is. We explore something here. There's this tool called GPTs. That's the big and coming thing now. And we will just like rush through it. But this is basically, you can, in a conversation, create a customized version of ChatGPT based on whatever data you give it. So like make an assistant for visual products, whatever. So I can throw that in there. And then in this conversation, it will build this GPT for me. And this will take a moment. Essentially, it will fill out this form back here, where it will also help you with DALL-E based on the instructions you created to create a logo. You can add conversation starters, which are basically like in the chat box, like the things written there, like the icebreakers basically for the conversation. You can give it the capabilities that GPT-4 has, and you can upload additional knowledge files. Additional knowledge files means you can upload all your PDFs, catalogs, SOPs, ISO procedures, everything, and it will automatically extract portions of it that are relevant to whatever you're doing. With the end game in these GPTs, that you can also connect this to like the plugins. This is why the plugins are obsolete, basically, in my opinion, because you can do the same here and you can add several of these actions per these GPTs, like as many as you want. It can talk to as many APIs that you control as you want. So you can basically provide your services through a fine-tuned version of GPT. And in the end, you can publish this. Publishing means eventually, and this is supposed to happen at the end of this month, which we are approaching, there will be a store where you can find and use GPTs. And everyone can do that. Like I have a ChatGPT Plus account. I'm registered as a builder for GPTs now. And in the end, there were no specifics, I think, published yet, but there will be a revenue share from OpenAI to the most used GPTs. And that is the next app store, if you ask me. It's still early, and Sam Altman disclosed that the ultimate goal is to create agents based on this. And agents are basically like the next step, autonomous GPTs, like little AIs, like little gremlins running around the internet and doing stuff for people, like the 100 people that might work for you now that Jim mentioned. This could be like based on GPTs. They did not invent that concept, but something for another day to discuss there. So what comes beyond? OpenAI, we mentioned a couple of things. OpenAI has APIs. The marketplace for the GPTs is the next big thing that's coming. And after the drama, I think before the drama even, it was confirmed that GPT-5 is in training. Look at competitors, look at other tools. There will be more of those startups, and even more of those will die in the next announcement that OpenAI makes. No matter what is in that announcement, that's the nature of things as it is now. I think that we are like nowhere near the peak where actually Gartner puts it in the Gartner hype cycle, like the technology visibility. I don't think we're anywhere close there. We are just getting started and we are just getting hyped. So when you remember beginning of the presentation, I told you what generative AI is. And of course, I had a generative AI telling me that. And because I found it was a little bit complicated, I asked it to explain it to me like I was 5. So there's no excuse not to use this tool for everything that you can use it for nowadays, because it can basically make you understand everything, no matter your prior knowledge about whatever topic. It can help you with everything. And I'm psyched. I'm a fanboy. You might probably be able to tell at this point. However, it's not perfect. Jim also mentioned that. And it's probably not going to be perfect anytime soon, because it's also trained on imperfect data, right? It's trained on data produced by us, by humans. And let's be honest, we are not perfect, most of us. And when I asked it to build takeaways, it basically just gave me a summary. of what I put in the presentation. But like what I really want you to take away from this is that ChatGPT is basically just a product based on a specific model that is based on a specific type of a large language model. Fun fact, there are other large language models called Ernie and BERT. Look them up. I would also like to discuss that. And large language model is basically just a specific type of deep learning, which is just a very sophisticated type of machine learning, which is just statistics, which is just math, and yeah, you know where this is going, right? So this is basically just like a fraction of what's possible. And ChatGPT is powerful, versatile. There are many alternatives. You have to find the right trade-off for you. Try as many tools as you can. Never let the big ones go out of your sight, because they are probably the ones that will stay the longest, and they are like OpenAI, more prone to doing adventures. You can apply this to everything. Be aware of the implications. Privacy, you might disclose data that you do not want to disclose or are not allowed to disclose. It's still in the open when you think about PI, IP, sorry, intellectual property. So there are like mechanisms in place that might protect you from that. Most of the time not. So be sensible about that. And hallucinations. So there might be facts and stuff that you just have to double, triple check. Jim told us about this lawyer that was fired because that person did not check that the president's case cited in what he sent to court, if that actually exists, because it didn't. And ChatGPT is very good at like inventing very convincing things like that. And we are only getting started. I'm psyched. Thank you. Happy to discuss.
Thank you, Marco. Before we start the Q&A, and I invite Marco to have a look in the Q&A. There are lots of questions for you. It is now time for the quiz, as we previously announced. We already shared the link, and you will have 3 minutes to complete it. So best of luck to each of you, and we'll reconvene shortly after the quiz concludes. So have a look in the Q&A. The link is there, but you can also access it through the Q&R code, which appears on the screen now. So the poll will automatically close after 3 minutes, as you will notice. One more minute to go. For those who have not filled it out earlier on. So there we are. Marco, Jim, we still have questions and time for a couple of them. Would you like to pick one of the questions? There are many.
Oh, I'm still going through. Did anyone like have favorites? So I don't know, I will just start here. So how do we navigate wisely the paradox of limitations, for example, GDPR and company policies, while also being encouraged by employer to be enthusiastic, exploring possible uses of these AI tools at work? So as the AI security policies, there should also be policies of applying these things, right? And if you follow that, you have guardrails, which you can like experiment. And like I would also like encourage you to push your employer to put like legally binding guardrails so you can play with these things without getting into like danger territory. But if your employer encourages you, that you are already like in a fantastic position, honestly. There are like a lot of things to keep in mind, and ChatGPT might, for something like this, not always be the best solution. So experimentation is really like the right answer there. Like the world of open source is amazing, and the answer in many cases might just be host it yourself. That's possible. There are like high qualitative things that you can run yourself in the open source world. I mentioned Hugging Face, I mentioned Llama, and those are like the basis of a lot of great things that are already happening. Why should one build her own digital twin? Oh, this for Jim. Those are still the twin questions. What do I use API access instead of ChatGPT, even for chats? There, access to GPT-4 new is available. Looking forward. Okay, so this is just about the API access. Yes, API access is great. There are fewer moderation features in the API, and your data will by default not be used to train. So when you are like tech savvy, API is a good place to be. Also, there's something called assistance that is something like those GPTs, which is even more powerful, and you can integrate this without any branding into your website. So no need to build your own chatbots anymore. Absolutely none, because even from the backend in the API, you can build these things in conversations. So another super powerful no-code, low-code tool. Yes, unstucking during coding is great. It's really one of the best features I had so far. So like not really relying on what there is, but knowing another step, even if it's the wrong step, you make the next step and you don't get stuck, because that's a big problem in programming. Then we have a lot of use cases in here, and it's super great. Okay, so Lyra is apparently the name of space pirate queens in general. Okay, that's good to know. Maybe I have to come up with a different name then when I want to publish my book for kids. How do you think AI is going to develop in a way to answer more generalized questions like moving disk puzzle from 3 columns to 4? I don't know. That sounds too specific for me to answer on the spot. And oh wow, is that even a generalized question? I'm not sure. I think this sounds like a very specific training, like AlphaGo or Deep Blue. So something that is trained on a specific task. What happens if there is a mistake in AI? How do you fix it? Oh, i.e. a wrong prediction of what I'm going to buy. So we were talking about generative AI here, right? And predictive AI is yet another thing to solve. And I think that we are very strong there in terms of machine learning itself. So, and what even is a mistake in a predictive model? A predictive model can usually give you probabilities, and everything with a low probability might still occur. So it's not a mistake, actually. It's just an improbable event. So this is an interesting question, but not easy to answer just from that context. I'm going with Jim. Yeah, I will also try to answer more of this. Asia, if you can have access to the questions, then maybe we can put this together then in an email or so, like the answers to the questions we couldn't answer. And I think
absolutely, there are so many. So we can do that. Absolutely.
What is the technical field in which you can foresee the most intense disruptions? thanks to AI progress? That is a good question. I think we are already there with coding. When I remember the last GitHub Universe, that's the GitHub in-house conference, I think more than 50% of newly checked in code is already AI generated. Because a lot of what happens in programming is writing boilerplate code, is solving the same problems over and over again, and it's error prone. I think we continue to have a huge impact in software development. I think copywriting, unfortunately, this has a big dark side. So there will be more spam emails, there will be more spam websites. Customer agents. We had this trend before generative AI already, that there were chatbots all over the place. They just got better. Those are good questions. The creative industry is definitely impacted. I use AI-based tools for video editing that take a lot of the repetitive tasks out, which is good for me, which is probably not good for someone I might have hired otherwise to do that. Like creating everything that's repetitive, basically. If I had to nail it down for a specific industry, good question. I think white collar work in general is more affected in this case. That's why I'm wearing a black collar today.
One last one, Marco.
Jim, you can pick a last one.
Let's see. I did put into the chat for those who want to build their digital twin, the Kyle Shannon pointer. So I think that's a good one for me to end on, because I think that's important that people start working on their digital twin. The one other thing I would add is, you know, and I've been retired from IBM for 2 years, but I'm sure IBM has a class that you have to take as an IBM employee on generative AI and the use of generative AI. And every year, IBM has something called our business conduct, I'm sure they still have it, business conduct guidelines, which are the rules of being an IBM employee, things you have to follow. And, you know, there's internet security, and they all have a little class, and there's questions, and you got to get them so many right, and everybody has to pass that. And so I would encourage, if you're a leader in a business, get a version of that 101 out and keep iterating on it, and then put it in your annual employee awareness education sign off, because it's important that, you know, employees explore and use this stuff, as Marco said. But on the other hand, you got to make sure they're doing it intelligently and wisely, and don't upload confidential information. That's probably number one on the list. You know, don't put any of our corporate secrets into these tools, because that's, you know, a condition of employment. You can be fired if you violate this. That's probably number one. And then, you know, there's other aspects of this as well. And IBM would probably, you know, again, I've been retired for 2 years, so I don't know, but we have experts and Slack channels. So if you have any questions, you just pop them into the Slack channel and some expert would answer them. So you get this real-time kind of thing going. So I would really encourage all organizations, EIT, digital, every organization should have the beginning awareness guide that you have to sign off. But, you know, the question is, I want to use this stuff. What do I do next? Well, you have to take this course. You have to check that you're aware of these issues, then go ahead and use it. But until you do that, you know, we as an employer aren't giving you our authorization. We know secretly you're already doing it, but that's the advice I have there. Hope that's helpful.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jim, Marco, for your knowledge and engaging lectures. We hope you find this journey into generative AI not only interesting, but also helpful, useful for your understanding of this challenging field. To all our participants, thank you for joining us today. As we finish the session, we are really excited to continue learning with you, and many of you will be joining in the upcoming weeks, starting on 5th of December with Navigating Project Management with AI with Antonio Nieto Rodriguez. So in the name of EIT Digital and on my behalf, and my colleagues, Olivia and Brahim, I wish each of you a wonderful day ahead or afternoon ahead. And once again, thank you for being part of today's insightful discussion. Goodbye.